It's time for the last talk of the day. But it's a very important one because through these 2 days, we've put in place several elements. We've talked to specialists about everything that concerns us, or most of the things that are important to us. And now it's time to take a step back and see the bigger picture. And that is what Ivan Brezak will help us do from Netocracia and Netocratic. So I'd like to welcome him on stage to talk about thought leadership. Let's give him a hand.
Thank you. Okay, do you guys hear me? Great. So, we'll be talking about fast leadership, or we'll be talking about content marketing. Depends if you're coming from the tech side, the startup side, or the marketing side. Now, keep in mind that we have a lot of slides to go through, but since this is the last session, I'll be very, very fast as that seems. So I'm the editor of Netocracia, and the founder of it as well, and also the editor of Netocratic. We're a blog, we're a website that covers tech, digital media, and business in Southeastern Europe, Central Eastern Europe. And we're hopefully going to follow Romanian startups and Romanian businesses even more than before. And I'm very happy to be here in front of you. So the topic is specifically thought leadership for sales strategy and survival. If you need to tweet me because my presentation sucks, that's my Twitter handle. Feel free. Not too much, but try to. So I had an idea for a talk at How to Web, and I pitched it to Bogdan. And unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to pitch to him well. It was a couple of days that he was preparing for the conference. It was a quick pitch over Skype, and unfortunately, it failed. My pitch for my first talk failed. Bogdan didn't like it. But thankfully, that's the case with one-time pitches. You have an idea, you suggest it to a friend, you suggest it to a colleague, and sometimes, unfortunately, it just doesn't work. I'm guessing a lot of people here have sometimes had an idea that didn't go well with their colleagues, friends. If you could put up your hands. Oh, come on. Okay, you're all geniuses. That's good. But, of course, some of you have had that experience, an idea no one really liked. And that's quite frustrating. It's like pitching your startup. It's like pitching your product. It's like presenting it to a customer, a client, a user. They just do not get it at first. And it's frustrating for you. So the bad first pitch, right? Don't worry. There's a solution. And thankfully, this talk is not going to be about pitching. We're not talking about startups or just startups. We're going to talk about content marketing. And that is content marketing for product companies. Now, a thing you have to know is that besides being a blogger, I also run an agency, a content marketing agency and a social media agency. We do Facebook fan pages, Twitter profiles for big corporations, banks, telecoms. We educated back in 2009, 2010, most of the big brands in Croatia, from where I'm based, about social media marketing. And the thing is that content marketing and social media marketing is something that's very developed now for the big companies, corporations. But unfortunately, from what I've seen, because we cover startups at Netocracia, product companies and startups are not using it well. And that's the thing with thought leadership. It's content, and let's see why. So, why content? For one thing, if you have a lot of content in any manner, it's good for SEO. You get traffic from Google, Bing, Yahoo, the point, but you get traffic. Another point is acquiring new users. You get new users because they find an article that's interesting to them, that relates to your product, they read it, and they see a link to your product, they register, you have a new user. And you haven't spent any money on ads. You've just created content. And of course, an even bigger point to a lot of you would be authority, right? You want to be seen as the expert in a given field. And being an expert is important, right? So if you're an expert, people believe you. People will give you the chance to present ideas or present products just because you're seen as someone who knows what you're talking about. But what are experts? Can you be an expert? I'm sure you can. The thing with experts in general is that we don't define them well. So, case in point is Zuckerberg. So Zuckerberg is a guy who founded Facebook not that long ago, and I'm sure you would agree that this guy in his given field is an expert, someone who knows his stuff, right? Yeah, he is. On the other hand, you have Bill. Bill built a big company in '75. That's a lot of years between Microsoft and Facebook. Bill is also an expert. When we talk about expertise in the normal sense, experts are seen as people who have great knowledge over a vast period of time. So Microsoft '75, Facebook 2004. But the thing is, as with these guys, you're an expert as well. If we look up the definition of an expert, it's a person who is very knowledgeable about or skillful in a particular area. There is no mention of time. Michael, who was at a panel yesterday that I moderated, the co-founder of Spigo, said that he considered Zuckerberg as someone who he could learn from, an expert. Now, Michael is quite older than Mark. And that's the thing. It doesn't have to do with age. It doesn't have to do with experience even. Michael has a lot more experience in terms of time. But he can learn a lot of stuff from Zuckerberg. And that's why defining experts matters in content marketing. An expert is just someone who knows more about a given topic than you do. I'm an expert in content marketing because I know a little bit more about it than you do. You're an expert for me because you know something I don't. It may be something about development. It may be something about design, as we heard in the previous talk. It might be something about hardware. Any person that knows more than me in a field is, to be honest, for me, an expert. My parents are experts in raising kids. I hope I turned out well. I really hope I did. But to be honest, any parent, to me, is an expert at parenting because they don't have kids, right? It's simple. And if you get to the gist of it, it's like explaining what a startup is. I'm sure all of you have some point in time explained what a startup or some other technical or industry term meant to someone who's not in the industry, right? What's a startup? You know, you're an expert to them. And that's cool. So specific knowledge means you're an expert. So here, a community manager who knows something about social media is an expert. And now, if we're talking about expertise and how to position yourself via content, there's a lot of ways. This is the internet marketing wheel. So there's a lot of things you can do, and I can't read it on this screen, but you have everything from wikis, music, events, documents, social CRM video, lots of services. You can position yourself on Flickr, even Delicious. If we go to the other side, there's social curation, so Flipboard, you can create a blog, you can create streams. There's a lot of content on the web. But let's start with the basics. Let's focus on content. First of all, if you want to do content marketing right, you need to target your target audience. What does that mean? If you go to Croatia on holiday, for example, and you ask in Zagreb, or Zagreb, because Dylan from 11 was going to tell me I don't say Zagreb or Zagreb like Croats do usually when I'm talking English. If you ask them who the biggest spammer in town is, they'll probably say, it's Ivan. If you also ask them who the blogger without a blog is, they'll probably say Ivan was. Why? Well, I was writing about blogs, I was talking about blogs, I was educating people about blogs without having a blog. I was an expert. I wrote posts on other people's blogs, and I didn't have a blog. Now, why is this important? It's important because you truly can be an expert and help people, even if you do not, well, eat your own dog food. Case in point is Envato. Envato is a company, or, sorry, wrong slide. Envato is a company that has numerous blogs. The CEO now employs almost 100 people in Australia. The path to their success was a blog. The guy didn't know how to create a blog until we met. We talked about blogs on chat. I think it was like ICQ back in the day. And he took like the theoretical knowledge I had about blogs, he went with it, and he created a blog that today is followed by more than 100,000 people on Twitter. Just on Twitter. I was an expert to him. He listened. It worked. I have not yet created a blog that's followed by 100,000 people on Twitter, but I strive to do that with Netocratic. The thing is, when you're doing content, you need to know what you're doing. In most cases, product companies do it wrong. They do the CEO blog. So I'm the CEO of the company. My thoughts matter. They don't. Although tweets could. So Aaron Levy from Box, in my opinion, he has the best tweets of any tech CEO. They're focused on the industry, they're short, they're sweet, and they're very retweetable. But the guy knows that he doesn't need a blog. There's no point to it. People wouldn't read his blog because his content in general, when it's long form, isn't that good. It's good when it's short. So you need to know how to pick your medium. The other example of content for product companies is the update blog. We're doing this feature. We just released this version. It doesn't matter. Most bloggers in the tech field will tell you that they do not care about your features if you're not Facebook, if you're not Foursquare, if you're not big enough. You do not care about your 1.2 version, 2.3 version, and so on. So forget them, because you're not going to get customers by telling customers what you're doing for them feature by feature. Also forget the corporate blog. The corporate blog is something that corporations started because it was started out of vanity. It was started because HR, in a lot of cases, had the budget to do it, or PR had the budget to do it. And it's nice to see. Corporates like to start them and share them and promote them, but startups do not need a blog that's centered around the product. That's easy. That's the newsletter, the news section of the website. That's not content marketing. It's targeting your users. If your users are B2B customers, you need to write about B2B. If you're targeting a specific niche, target the users that are using your product. So the topic is not you. The topic is not your company. The topic is something that relates to your product. I mentioned Envato. Envato has this product. It's called ActiveDen today. Before it was called FlashDen, before Adobe came in and said, look, you can't really call it FlashDen. It should be ActiveDen, although you have Flash and Flex files. And it's the biggest repository of Flash and Flex files in the world. Envato also has Free Forest and a number of other marketplaces where you can buy digital goods. Now, they could have done an ActiveDen blog, and people would have followed it. The problem is customers wouldn't. So what they did is they said, well, look, we need people who will use Flash files and want cheap Flash files to download, and on the other hand, we want content creators that will create content. So they created Freelance Switch. That's the blog, followed by a lot of people. And today, it's the biggest freelance website, the biggest freelance blog in the world. PSD Toots, same thing. So content is a cheap and easy way to do your MVP in most cases. It's basically, if you have a product, you target your audience, you check if they are interested. People were interested in freelance Switch, they were interested in PSD Toots, ergo, they were interested in freelance products, and they were interested in Photoshop products. And what went with that, and today they have more than 10 marketplaces, more than, I think, 15 blogs, and they're growing and growing and growing and bootstrapping without a single investment yet to this day. And I still haven't managed to make the founder visit Croatia. So call us if you're watching this, and I hope you are. You're freaking coming to Zagreb next year. So a big part of doing content marketing and doing a blog is dedicating time to writing. Not a lot of it, but enough. Now, if you don't have time to write, that's fine. You can hire someone, hire a writer. You can hire a chief content officer. It's easy. Case in point, Paymill. So Kostas, who I hope is somewhere here, is Paymill's content guy, right? They found him as a freelancer, then they hired him. If you can't create content, hire someone who can. Also, of course, start by freelancing, then hiring, as I said. When you have the blog, when you have the content website that's targeted to your audience, get that email, get that like, get that tweet. What I mean by this is that when you know who you're reaching, so if I'm reaching freelancers, they can visit one time, a second time, a third time. The thing is, most blogs and most media in general do not focus on the repeat visitor. Why is that? Well, most media, like Netocratic, right, or TechCrunch, Mashable, the upcoming Tide.eu, we know that people come to us daily. We don't need to really persuade them to subscribe to something because they'll be back, probably, because we have new content daily. For you, it's probably going to be far harder to have daily content. So what you want to do is have weekly content, but incentivize people to follow you actively, so you can push content to them. Examples include this very annoying pop-up that gets the email of a visitor, of a reader, and sends them daily updates. Now, this is not something that's nice in the geeky, techie field. This is something that's freaking despicable. How can someone do this? This is evil, but it works. If you do content, do this. I won't do it on Netocratic for a simple reason. We're visited by geeks. If you have a geeky audience, don't do this. They hate it. But if you have a mainstream audience or anything near mainstream, it works like a charm. Another example is Buffer. So the Buffer blog doesn't focus on one particular topic. They focus on what's important in digital. And what they do is they have long-form articles weekly, about 3 to 4 times a week, and they capture emails all over the site. And this is something that most blogs and most content projects don't do. They do not capture the repeat visitor. In this case, it's very simple. It just says, we have 10,000 people watching our content. 10,000 people, okay, the content must be good, I'll subscribe. It's a simple email field, I'll give you my email, that's fine. And of course, as you can see, right under the email field, they even promote jobs at Buffer. This is another example from the same blog. When you scroll down to the article, again, a pop-up appears, join 10,000 people for new articles from buffer.com or bufferapp.com. And people do. And that's good for them, because the more repeat visitors they have, the more the new content is accessible to new audiences, because the current readers will share it over Twitter, Facebook, and so on. So readers basically become users. Now, even when you have a blog, a content website, you've targeted your users, you've promoted it, you've shared it on Facebook and Twitter, there's one thing that most people will forget, and that's having a bleep voice. I'm not going to curse. I usually curse in my presentations. I'm not going to do that this time. I respect Bogdan too much to do that. But it's true that most people just don't let go. They're too nice, they're too polite, they write their articles and their content like, I don't know, they're writing in school. The fact is that's boring. People do not care about facts, only when facts are, of course, very dramatic, very important, very well represented, because you can have an interesting fact and have it presented in a very, very boring way. The thing with content marketing in general, and what you must know, is that you have to position yourself not as I said before, not as a corporate, not as just one more startup updating their product, not caring about what they're doing, but actually position yourself as an authority, as an expert, as Bill and Zuck. I imagine that if Bill or Mark were here, you could, and of course from their writing on their own blogs, some of the statuses Mark has posted on Facebook, I think we could all imagine how they would act like. So we'd imagine Mark as being a little shyish, right? And we've seen him on video. His writing is very similar to how he acts. And Bill, the authority, but a bit boring like Microsoft is. And I love Bill Gates, but that's how he acts. With other people, they might be more extreme. So, for example, Mike Butcher of TechCrunch, he's a freaking personality, right? You know what you can expect from Mike, and you can expect that from his writing. And what you can see in that specific example is why content works. Because content is not only the blog, the content website, the Twitter profile that we see on the web. It's any content presented any way. It can be this talk. It can be something that's seen on video. But it has to be something that has character, that's interesting. And even if you're an authority, even if you're an expert, you'll be a better expert if you try to be extreme. And I don't mean extreme in the bad sense, that you'll curse everything and you'll break stuff. I mean extreme like comics. So comics, you don't have small moves. In comics, every move that you see illustrated on paper is extreme. It's taken to the point of, well, either the guy is getting punched or the other guy is getting punched. You don't see anything in the middle, right? And that's the same thing with content. You have to have a voice. You have to have an opinion. And what do I mean by this, for example, is 37 Signals. Now, if you didn't know, 37 Signals from Chicago had a valuation that topped $100 billion after a bold VC investment, after a group of investors who agreed to purchase 0.0000001% of the company in exchange for $1. Now, what might be obvious is that guys wrote a satirical post. Why? Well, Snapchat. These guys hate, I wouldn't say hate, but don't like the whole startup investment scene. They really dislike it. They have a very, very specific view on it, and they voice it regularly on their blog. Now, people who like bootstrapping, who don't like investments that much, aren't sure about them, love these guys. Like, 37 Signals gets so many new followers when they do stuff like this, it's incredible. But it's because they have a voice. They have a specific opinion that they tell their audience, who, of course, is a repeat visitor, who follows them on Twitter, Facebook, by email, and who eats this stuff up. That's the thing. What most companies do wrong is they don't have an opinion. And that's fine. If you're a corporate, you really don't want to have a specific opinion because PR wouldn't like it. It's not good policy. But if you're a startup, and we say startups, for example, need enemies, need like the big corporation they're going to kill or whatever, then having a voice, having a strong opinion is very important. So an example is How to Web. How to Web's opinion, or Bogdan's opinion personalized, is that Romania is a good place to create a tech company in. People should freaking have more tech companies. Investors should invest here. That's a strong opinion. They're not saying, oh, it would be nice, whatever. I think like if Bogdan was a little less nicer a person, he would freaking get pissed off every time on stage and like really tell what he thinks, how he strongly urges tech companies to be born in this country. So you have to be very opinionated, because it just freaking works. You have to create content that has an opinion. Of course, this can backfire. So Liquor.com raises 3.1 million in Series B funding. This was an article written on TechCrunch not that long ago by editor John Biggs. Now, since the site sells alcohol, I think, something in that sense, he decided to have fun with it. So he wrote it as if he was drunk. So imagine a blog post that's kind of like tipsy TechCrunch blogger writes about startup. Yeah, it doesn't sound that good. If you read the article first time, it'll seem like, what? That's not TechCrunch. When you read it the second time, it's like, okay, he's kidding, whatever, fun. So he writes like, he writes about a startup, and at the end he says, anyway, how's your dad? He was fly fishing or whatever. Oh yeah, not your dad, Edith's dad. He's rambling, as if he was drunk. Now this is cute, right? The thing is, people on the internet do not always take kindly to sarcasm, to irony, and so on. So of course he got a lot of troll comments saying like, how can an offer on TechCrunch be drunk while he's writing about alcoholic startups? Oh, right. So things can backfire, but in the end, this post got a lot of likes, and this again type of opinion, not opinion, but maybe like style works. So with content, even when you promote it, even when you target users, you have to have a certain style, a certain opinion. And I have a, okay, so first of all, you have to be an expert, right? Because you can be an expert. You're an expert to me. The guy that's typing on his Mac in the first row, he's an expert to me because he can type faster than I can. Bogdan is an expert for me because he can organize an awesome conference in Romania. Second, be topical. Decide on a topic and don't talk about yourself. Talk about your users. If you're B2B, talk about B2B. If you're doing, let's say, Blusher, the like dating for teens startup, tips for dating for teens, there you go. 3, target your readers' users. Target the users, not your own community. You don't need more startups reading about you. You need users. 4, get emails, likes. Get people to become repeat readers. 5, have a voice, have an opinion. If you need to, feel free to curse. Not always, but sometimes it works. And have some style. Don't be boring, right? Because the thing is, with these kinds of projects, the story that you're giving through the content that you create for your blog, for Twitter, for newsletters later, email, tells the story of your company. And you repeat this. You create the content again and again. You hire someone, right? You hire someone to write the content regularly. And of course, at the end, when they're reading your content, loving your style, and listening to your presentations, then you put the call to action in, and you have a new user. And this may seem like just a strategy to get users. It is. But this is very important. Why? Because the biggest problem the media has, in general, with product companies, with startups, is that you guys, unfortunately, cannot sell your story. You cannot tell your story. Why? To be honest, because you don't think about it nearly as much as you should. You think about the features, you think about the benefits, but you do not think about Zuck versus Bill Gates. You do not imagine Bogdan cursing on stage. You do not think about how a story can impact your startup. And the thing is, if you write a blog regularly, and this is the most important bit, and why this talk is entitled Thought Leadership, it's not that you'll just start to empower your users to tell your own story, to get them to register, to believe in your product. But through telling the story, through creating content that's relevant to your users, you in fact empower yourself. And your project, your tech company, will have its story written on in blog that you can visit every freaking day and see how awesome you are. And that's why update blogs don't really work. You don't want boring updates. You want good content that's true to yourself with a voice, because you, well, to not be polite for the first time in this talk at the very end. You give a shit about what you do. And that's it. Write content and try to create it as much as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ivan. Do we have any questions? You will be the last ones to get your questions answered here. Well, it seems.
Yeah, I think we're last. They'll troll me on Twitter.
But I'm sure, definitely. I'd recommend that. I'm sure you'll answer all the questions there. So thank you again.
Thank you.